Hey, boo-boo. Have you ever heard of Hanna-Barbera? Yeah. Growing up, there were a bunch of classic shows that came on. A lot of reruns, and then eventually it became successful enough that it got its own channel called Boomerang. And a lot of it was like Yogi Bear reruns, Josie and the Pussycat reruns, Jetsons, Jabberjaw, just Chugabug. There were a lot, Wally Gator. There were a lot of classic Hanna-Barbera cartoons that just, it was unbelievable what, like, how much power and how much, like, reach they had in cartoons back in the day. And it's a reach that's still felt to this day because everybody remembers Scooby-Dooby-Doo, where are you? And that is arguably like their biggest like watermark in terms of pop culture.
Gotten away with it too if it weren't for you meddling kids and your dog.
Yeah. And honestly, I love the fact that Hanna-Barbera had such a huge part in shaping animation, and I look back on the shows and I look back fondly because a lot of them were really, really well done. And sadly, like with most things, with every rise, there is a fall. And I would say the fall started way before the passing of like Bill Hanna and Joe Barbera, the two heads of the thing. But there was a lot of things that happened that changed up the overall makeup of cartoons as a whole. And I guess Saber Spark is going to tell us all about it with his video here. What ruined Hanna-Barbera?
So I was never aware that they were ruined. I thought they were already just classic cartoons by the time I started seeing them when I was a kid. So.
Well, yeah, but
So how do you ruin something that's already cemented in a location as like a classic? You know?
Well, I think it's just the company itself, because much like how this would be if Apple was bought out by Microsoft, which almost happened. That almost happened. And Apple was basically trading for nothing. Like, their stocks were trading for nothing. And then Steve Jobs came back, and he basically hired a bunch of new thinking people who actually knew how to design shit. And I give credit where credit's due. The dude knew what a lot of people wanted. It's just he couldn't code anything, and he never really truly designed anything. But I still give him credit for what he did. I mean, he brought that company back from the dead. And it would basically, like, Hanna-Barbera, everything that they had has basically just been sold out to Time. I think Time Warner's the one who bought it. Time Warner, Warner Brothers, and all them. I think they're what owns basically most of the Hanna-Barbera catalog. And honestly, I would like to know how everything went. So Saber Spark's got a video here for us. What do you say we give it a watch? All right, here we go.
Hanna-Barbera, one of the most influential studios in the world of animation. They were the first to truly focus their cartoons for television and left all of the competition in the dust. There was even a time during the 1970s where they controlled almost 80% of children's programming and 2/3 of the Saturday morning block. Hanna-Barbera is also responsible for providing some of the most iconic
Flintstones.
I mentioned them when I was talking about the Jetsons.
Yeah, Huckleberry, and then of course Scooby-Doo, Yogi, Jesus.
cartoon characters of all time. Scooby-Doo, Yogi Bear, the Flintstones, the Jetsons, the Smurfs, and the list goes on and on. There was no doubt that they were the undisputed kings of televised animation, but for some reason, it all came crumbling down. They went from being the largest player in the game to being just another subsidiary. It was a fall from grace of epic proportions, and it leaves us asking one question. How? How did this titan of the industry fail when it commanded almost 80% of it? And what exactly brought them to their knees? Well, there's a lot more to it than you think. So let's find out what ruined Hanna-Barbera. Our story begins back in the 1930s. It was an age of theatrical shorts and was well before the creation of the television. If you wanted to see cartoons, you had to go to the movie theaters. There, you would see Mickey Mouse, Betty Boop, Popeye, the Looney Tunes, and many other characters. This was an excellent place for the growth of future talent, and that included William Hanna, aka Bill, and Joseph Barbera, aka Joe. They both met while working together at the animation division of MGM Studio. In 1939, they worked together on a short that was called Puss Gets the Boot. Look
Tom
familiar?
and Jerry. They literally were the figureheads that started Tom and Jerry, which is awesome.
This
short would serve as the future basis for Tom.
MGM owned it for a while, and now I think Time Warner owns it. I think. I don't know.
I was going to say, because I don't recall Tom and Jerry being a Hanna-Barbera thing whenever I was watching it.
Well, originally it was, and actually, from what I remember, Tom's yell for the longest time was Joe Barbera. Like, he was the one who did the yell for Tom. Like, every time Tom got his tail smushed, he was like, ah! Yeah, but honestly, they worked on it for a long time. Then I know Chuck Jones did work on it. I incorrectly said that Tex Avery worked on it, and I'm sorry about that. So yeah, my fault on that. There were several other studios that had their hands on it, and a lot of people, but Hanna-Barbera were the ones that basically like started the wheel turning.
Tom and Jerry, two of the most iconic cartoon characters of all time. Here's a fun fact. The sound effect for Tom's yell was actually recorded by Bill Hanna.
Oh, it was Bill Hanna. I thought it was Joe Barbera. Huh.
Bill and Joe would go on to
yell.
Yeah.
Also, he landed right on that pull stick when he fell back down.
Yeah,
that went all the way inside him.
Don't make it worse. Don't make it worse, bro.
They used Tom and Jerry shorts for over 20 years, and were even nominated for 12 Oscars, of which they won 7. But Tom and Jerry was just the beginning for these two, as they would grow more industrious and pursue other goals. In 1955, Bill and Joe became the head producers of MGM Animation, though this would only be for a little while. In 1957, MGM closed down their animation studio, believing that they had enough backlog content for the foreseeable future. Fortunately for William and Joe, they were able to land on their feet and were given an offer by film director George Sidney. He said he would be their business partner and convinced Screen Gems, a television production subsidiary of Columbia Pictures, to make them a deal.
Isn't it subsidiary?
Huh?
Isn't it subsidiary?
Subsidiary of.
I keep saying subsidiary.
Yeah, it is subsidiary, and subsidiary. I guess it's a pronunciation gaffe. You know, like some people say tomato, and all that. I don't know. Nuclear. Like the people like.
It sounds to me like someone incorrectly pronouncing something like library, like instead of library. You know.
I don't know. Also, Columbia, Screen Gems. These are now both owned by Sony.
Of Columbia Pictures to make them a deal. Because of this, they were able to create HB Enterprises, and it would become the first major animation studio to provide cartoons for television. The first show to come from HB Enterprises was The Ruff and Teddy Show in December of 1957. It aired on NBC and was semi-successful, but the following show would blow it out of the water.
Everybody's a star on Huckleberry Hound Show, so let's go!
The Huckleberry Hound Show came out in 1958 and was the first big hit for Bill and Joe. It premiered in syndication and aired right before prime time in most markets. It also introduced Yogi Bear, who went on to get his own cartoon in 1961. Also, Huckleberry was the first show to ever win an Emmy for Outstanding Kids Program. Joe and Bill had finally found their momentum, and they ran with it.
Aw, shucks, folks.
In 1959, they decided to change the name of their company to Hanna-Barbera Productions. And the year after that, one of the most iconic families in animation history arrived, and they went by the name of the Flintstones.
Yep, had to mute this. Flintstones, meet the Flintstones. They're the modern Stone Age family.
This was the first animated show to gain a primetime slot. It was also the first animated sitcom, though it's no surprise that it took inspiration from the Honeymooners. As a matter of fact, Jack Gleason almost sued Hanna-Barbera, but decided against it. He said that he didn't want to be known as, quote, the guy who yanked Fred Flintstone off the air.
Winston is the one filter cigarette that delivers flavor 20 times a pack. Winston's got that.
Yeah. Well, no, that's the thing. Like, back then, cigarettes were seen as safe as candy. And...
It's crazy.
I know, right?
The plan. Yeah, Fred.
The Flintstones would hold the title of longest-running animated primetime show for over 35 years. But that was eventually surpassed by The Simpsons in 1996.
And in some ways rightfully so, although I would say The Simpsons after 1998 just needed to stop. It's like, they had 10 good years. I mean, you could say 15 because there were some pretty good ones a few years after that, but for the most part, I consider the first 10 seasons of or especially seasons 2 through 10, like some of the best animated sitcom work ever.
Considering that they were the first ones to do it, and held it for so long, that's still a respectable record.
Yeah. Wilma!
There were quite a few shows that Hanna-Barbera launched during the 1960s. Johnny Quest, The Jetsons, Yogi Bear,
awesome.
and
yeah, both versions of it. The original 1960 serial.
The remake's even better.
Oh, I think the remake series has it beat in multiple ways. The animation quality,
really cool.
And the story was more grown up too. The story was like more set, sort of, kind of in reality. I mean, Questworld was cool, but for VR for virtual reality stuff at the time, that's very unrealistic. But anyway.
Top Cat, to name a few.
Top Cat was fun.
Hanna-Barbera was cranking out cartoons left and right. So many cartoons. But there was one show that came out during this decade that would become their golden ticket. In 1969, there was Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And it was a massive hit for Hanna-Barbera. The show would go on to redefine their content as they discovered a formula for creating cartoons. All you would need are a bunch of teens, a wacky sidekick, and some kind of crazy adventure. And Hanna-Barbera went nuts making clones of Scooby-Doo.
Yep.
It's Goober and the Ghost Chasers. Guest starring
Yeah.
the Partridge Kid.
Never seen that before.
Here's the thing. Some worked, some didn't. Jabberjaw was one that they did. It was basically like an anthropomorphic shark that played the drum.
Jabberjaw was okay from what I saw.
Yeah. But some lasted.
The
some
1970s would
just a straight up Scooby-Doo rip-off right there. Like,
yes, it is.
themselves off.
Well, that's the thing. Is like they find the formula and they just like milk it to death. That, hate to say it, but it's like
That doesn't work though.
no, it doesn't.
Not
And
when you actually like straight up 100% copy it.
no, and that's the thing is like I hate to say it, but artists get to a point sometimes where they're cooking so good with something that they just dice it up and repackage it as something different when in truth it's all the same. They do that all the time. And this is why I appreciate artists like Martin Scorsese, because Martin Scorsese, he strives to do something different every single time he directs a movie. He doesn't try and do... He could, if he wanted to, he could make Raging Bull copies. He could make Goodfellas copies. He could make Taxi Driver copies. But he doesn't. He literally tries to do something different every time he directs a film, and that is a great artist. This just feels wrong.
Sad.
Proved to be an amazing decade for Hanna-Barbera. They
Oh,
controlled
gosh.
over
I use
80%
a
of children's
baller.
programming.
The
And
Laugh
2/3 of the
Olympics, yeah.
cartoons that would air on Saturday mornings. No other studios could ever come close to their levels of success. And for good reason, too. A big part of Hanna-Barbera's success was how they streamlined the production of their cartoons. It's no secret that high-quality animation is very expensive and also very time-consuming. How could one possibly provide animated content for something as demanding as television? That's a big reason why Disney backed out of televised animation when it was first launched. They saw it as way too demanding, both in production and cost. But for Hanna-Barbera, they were able to come up with a solution, one that would give them a huge advantage, and it's called limited animation.
Yeah.
It's cheap, it's
Repetitions.
fast, and it can be reused over and over and over.
It feels like we've been on this same stretch of road forever. Look, there it is again.
Yep.
What, Dee?
Quite
That
literally.
pile of rocks. We keep passing it. There it is again. And again.
Now, Dee, that's called a repeat pan. First implemented by William Hanna and Joseph Barbera in 1947 to streamline production costs.
This was a method to cut
Quite
back
literally.
on cost in a big way, whether it's reusing same backgrounds, cutting down...
Basically, you take the same animation cells as the background, and you just animate like character cells over top of it, and you basically just like whenever like you do a selection on you do a shot, you basically, and then you move the thing a little bit, move it a little more, move it a little more. Next thing you know, you've got a running animation. Boom, there you go. And nobody notices it because, in all honesty, on televisions back in the day, you couldn't really notice it 100% because the picture quality was not as good as what we have nowadays. Nowadays, everything's in 4K, 8K, HD, everything's upscaled and like depixelated. And when you look at stuff back then on like the TVs that they were working with, you can see why they could get away with that kind of stuff. You can't do that nowadays. Sad to say.
on in-between frames, or reusing the same frames. Funny enough, this used to be a stylistic choice before it became a method for cutting down on cost. UPA was initially known for it, but Hanna-Barbera used it to save lots of money, and it was one of the main reasons why they were able to dominate the industry.
Circles music video.
Chuck Jones, one of the legendary animators of old, was not too fond of it, and called Hanna-Barbera Illustrated Radio. They were also nicknamed the General Motors of animation, due to their assembly line style of making cartoons.
From the idea and the story, we then move into layout. Now, layout is where we take these drawings, sketch them up larger.
Just puff a cigarette and get to drawing.
Begin to move the characters
I love
around.
it.
Like I already said, Hanna-Barbera was dominating the 1970s, and very few studios could compete with them on television. Filmation was one of their few competitors, but it flopped with its show Uncle Croc's Block. After that, ABC severed ties with Filmation and began commissioning its entire Saturday morning to Hanna-Barbera. Now, Hanna-Barbera focused mainly on television,
Couldn't imagine
but they
why
did
that,
work on
Phil.
the...
That just looked creepy.
Yeah, sometimes like characters like that can work. Barney, for instance, but you have to fully commit to him being a suit. You can't just have like the weird suit and then the dude's face right here, just like, "Hey kids, you want to watch some cartoons?"
Not
No,
to mention, I don't want to hear anything about Uncle Croc's Block.
that's yeah.
Occasional theatrical film. In 1973, Charlotte's Web came
Oh,
out,
yeah.
and it had mixed reviews. Some people
Why?
loved it, other people hated it.
I always
And that
loved that
also
movie as a
included
kid.
the original author of the story, E.B. White. He said, quote, "We have never ceased to regret that our version of Charlotte's Web never got made. The Hanna-Barbera version has never pleased either of us. A
Really?
travesty."
Well, I hate to say it, but Steve, certain authors are very selective with their work. For instance, Stephen King. Even though Frank Darabont has made some of the best adaptations of Stephen King's work, Stephen King is still not happy with it. And same thing with The Shining, which is considered an all-time classic in terms of filmmaking. Stephen King hates that version, and he actually tried to make his own version for the miniseries, and it is as dry as a sawdust cracker in the middle of the desert. I'm not joking. Holy crap. But Charlotte's Web I liked when I was a kid. I think maybe it's because I didn't read the book. Maybe if I'd read the book, I'd have a different perspective on it.
I read the book and saw the film, and I liked both.
Okay, there you go. Once again, just everyone's got a different opinion.
The most terrible case of injustice I ever heard
Oh,
of.
look at the little
Regardless of the ups and downs, Hanna-Barbera remained the king of the televised animation industry. Their methods had put them on top, and they were able to hold that position for decades. But change was on the horizon. Television was about to go through another transformation, and Hanna-Barbera would soon face a new type of competition.
I think Josie and the Pussycats might be the first time that I ever saw animated ladies that I thought were kind of hot.
Yeah, a lot of people had to crush on Melody. I can't blame them.
The 1980s would be a turbulent time for
Oh god, and of course, I don't even need to talk about like the freaking like Josie and the Pussycats movie that came out in the 2000s, I think it was. Did you?
Yeah, we don't talk about that.
No. How dare you? How dare you ruin that?
Hanna-Barbera. Up to this point, they were essentially
Penelope
unchallenged,
Pitstop,
and very
Space
few could
Ghost,
hope to stand up to them.
The
And
Banana
those that
Splits,
did were not very successful.
Adam Ant.
But a new era of cartoons
There it
were
is.
on the way.
Outsourced to Japanese companies.
Welcome to the world of animated licensed properties.
Yep.
G.I. Joe, My Little Pony, Transformers, He-Man, Thundercats,
Oh.
TMNT, and the list goes on. This was a game changer for televised animation. What better way to sell toys to children than putting advertisements directly in cartoons? Yeah, this was ethically questionable, but it also
Very.
proved to be very profitable.
G.I. Joe Air Defense, G.I. Joe Checkpoint, Cobra Bunker, and Joe and
I
Dreadnoughts figure.
didn't really ever see but like an episode of like G.I. Joe and like maybe an episode of Transformers, and I still wanted the toys when I went to the toy store because they looked cool as hell.
Yes.
I
watched...
have to advertise on too.
Dude, I watched the hell out of Thundercats. I watched the hell out of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I watched the hell out of Transformers. And I bought so many toys. Well, okay. Bought is a strong word. I was able to get some from like bargain bins that were G.I. Joe and stuff like that, or knockoff G.I. Joe stuff. But yeah, overall, I had so many Dude, I had one Transformer. I was able to. It was this little green car that you could transform into the little man and everything. He would stand up, and he had like a little blaster that came out of his arm, and I was like, dude, this is so cool. And I spent so long just transforming him back and forth, and I actually timed to myself like how fast I could get him to like do the pose and then put him back as a car, dude. And then
I got into Transformers mainly around Beast Wars, so I had mostly Beast Wars toys.
I actually have some Beast Wars toys out there. I have Depth Charge, the Stingray one, and I also have a Tiger Hawk as well. I
eventually
dude, I love
had
it so
the 20-inch Cheetor. Took me forever to convince my mom to save up and get it
that
for
was
her like a Christmas
yeah,
present.
that was a great one, dude.
Here's each sold separately from Hasbro.
Along with this change came another that would alter the landscape of animated television forever. And that was the airing of cartoons outside of Saturday morning. Up to this point, if you wanted to watch cartoons, you had to make time in your schedule. There was a rise of syndicated cartoons, and more channels were airing them on
Chitara.
weekdays and not just on Saturday morning. There were now more time slots to fill, and TV networks went to studios such as Deke, Marvel, and Sunbow. After many, many years, Hanna-Barbera had finally met their match. Now, Hanna-Barbera wasn't completely defeated during this era. They still had a few tricks up their sleeve, and one of them came in the form of tiny blue people.
There was a hidden village where tiny creatures lived. They called themselves Smurfs. They were good.
The Smurfs came out in 1981 and was a big hit for Hanna-Barbera. It ran for 9 seasons and was the longest running Saturday morning.
I don't understand what happened with the gaming term Smurf. Like, why does Smurf mean that you are better at the game?
And you're using an alternate account.
You made another account, and now you're acting like you're a new player, so you can clown on noobs, basically.
I don't know, man.
Why did Smurf get adopted as that term?
I don't know. That's a weird one.
Morning show in history with a whopping 256 episodes. Outside of the Smurfs, Hanna-Barbera produced other shows to try and stay relevant, but none of them could really stack up against this new wave of animated licensed properties. Their control over the market was slipping, as it dropped from 80% to 20%.
Did you have a tough day, dear?
Yes.
The end of the 1980s and the early 90s remained tough for the company. There was also this bizarre wave of cartoons that were younger versions of classic characters, such as the Flintstone Kids, Tom and Jerry Kids, Popeye and Son, and a pup named Scooby-Doo. To be fair, this one was actually good.
Yeah.
But it still wasn't enough to bring Hanna-Barbera back from the edge. There was also Pirates of Darkwater, which was really cool. But also, there was Yo Yogi, which was really bad.
Horrible.
Yo, 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 yogi.
Once again, the 90s had this fascination with trying to urbanize all of their characters. It wasn't just them. It wasn't just Hanna-Barbera, but they did it with Goofy. They did it with the Quack Pack. They did it with the Mickey Mouse Club. They did so much trying to urbanize and make things more hip and cool, and it wound up having a very bad taste in the mouth afterwards.
The 1990s proved to be an interesting time for Hanna-Barbera. The company went through some pretty big changes and was acquired by Turner Broadcasting and the Apollo Investment Fund for $320 million. For those who don't know, Ted Turner was on a quest around this time to acquire a majority of cartoons for his new television channel, one that would air animated shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it went by the name of Cartoon Network.
Okay,
He wasn't just on a quest to acquire cartoons, was he? Wasn't he buying like a bunch of other stuff too?
Yeah,
didn't he try to compete with Vince McMahon?
Oh yeah,
wrestling and stuff.
That's the thing. Ted Turner is I use this term in the most endearing way possible. Ted Turner is a vindictive bastard whenever it comes to like anyone who challenges him on something. Because I remembered, I think it was someone in a board meeting, and Ted was just like, kids are actually coming home from school and they're not having to walk home from school. So why don't we give them a channel that they can tune into to watch cartoons after they're done with their homework and stuff like that? And basically, I think it was someone who was on the board with him said, Ted, we aren't interested in what kids want. Kids can't buy anything. Why would we be interested in that? And Ted was like, all right, let's see how this goes. And that's when he came with the idea for Cartoon Network, and the rest is history. Cartoon Network basically took over children's programming because, here's the thing, kids may not be able to buy stuff, but their parents can. That's how it works. It's literally, it literally painted the blueprint for television for kids for like the next 20, 30 years. And then, not only that, but when it came to Vince McMahon, basically Vince McMahon was on a rampage to buy up all of the wrestling talent and shut down all of the independent promotions out there and make himself like the sole big name in the game. Ted saw this, got pissed off about it, and was just like, you know what? I'm gonna do something that's gonna compete with him. So he purchased Jim Crockett Promotions and basically bought up a bunch of talent from a bunch of different places, basically paid them higher than what Vince was going to pay them, and that's when he came up with WCW. And WCW, for the first few years, basically dominated WWE because they beat them in the ratings for almost 2 years. And then, of course, Ted Turner got like basically after he proved that he could beat Vince McMahon in his own game, he basically just abandoned it and sold the WCW property off to AOL. AOL had no interest in going into professional wrestling. No interest. And they basically just donated no money to it, and it shut down. And that was that. But now Ted's back in it with AEW, and now AEW is in trouble now because their ratings are starting to slip, and they don't know why. And in all honesty, WWE is on the rise again, and it's looking like a repeat of what happened about 20 plus years ago with like the shutdown of WCW. Although, I don't know. Now that Vince McMahon's not in the game anymore, I have faith in WWE because they're making better decisions now, and they aren't going on the whims of a crazy old man who is obsessed with incest for some reason. What the fuck, Vince? Jesus.
I was gonna say, I am glad that he put together Cartoon Network because I got into a lot of my favorite stuff.
Oh yeah,
Cartoon Network eventually, especially whenever they started doing Toonami.
Oh yeah.
But also in retrospect, it is crazy how I grew up being advertised to all the time and how much it worked because I would go ask my parents for stuff I saw in advertisements on TV commercials and things. And it's crazy how like little stigma that has whenever it kind of in retrospect it's sort of scummy as fuck.
It is, and in all honesty, Ted Turner, like, he said that he tried to be more forethoughtful about it by doing like shows like Captain Planet that spoke to you about like the environment and stuff like that, but instead it was just a giant fellatio job that he did to himself to try and convince himself he was a good person.
Yeah, everything in between that, the commercials and stuff, you know, like it was all like specifically targeted straight at kids, being like, "Hey kids,
buy this."
Yeah,
like Pop Rocks.
It's like we can't buy it, but we can go bug our parents about it.
Exactly.
Sure. It's like I remember like there's still like jingles and stuff stuck in my head, like
same dude.
Sock and boppers, more fun than a pillow fight. I always wanted sock and boppers. My mom would never let me have any.
Bop it.
Yep.
Twist it.
You get caught up in the crossfire.
I actually got a crossfire set up in the garage.
Yeah, I know. One of our fans sent it to you, and we never did fucking play it.
We need to. We need to play it one time. So.
I'm gonna work it into a D&D campaign at some point, and so you have to pull it out, like just to pass a puzzle.
Oh my god! Oh my god, dude! You just you evil son of a gun! I can't believe you said that.
All right. How do I look?
Fred!
Come on, Olive. Ready?
Ready. Take it from the top.
Okay, boys. A 1, a 2.
Cartoon Network was launched in October of 1992 and had a massive backlog of Hanna-Barbera shows. It was a new era for the company, as they were now airing their old content on cable. In 1993, Ted Turner bought the remaining Hanna-Barbera properties from Apollo Investment and was now the sole owner of the company and all of its cartoons.
No, that's not Grape Ape. Never mind.
This was the right direction for Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah, Grape Ape was a different one.
They needed to shake things up. And along with his change came new leadership. Fred Seibert, former executive for MTV, was hired as the new president for Hanna-Barbera, and he had some big plans in store. First off, they needed to hire new artists. A good chunk of the old animators had left Hanna-Barbera, so there was now a gap to fill. But this was an opportunity to bring in some fresh talent, to hire people who had ideas to shake up the scene. Some really big names got their start at Hanna-Barbera around this time. Craig McCracken, Genndy Tartakovsky, Seth MacFarlane, Butch Hartman, and many others.
Van Partible.
I was actually able to reach out to Fred with some questions, and he was kind enough to answer. I asked him what his plans were for Hanna-Barbera when he first was put in charge. He said that he wanted to return back to cartoons, that the studio had strayed too far away over the years from making funny cartoons, and instead focused too much on animated sitcoms. So it was his goal to get Hanna-Barbera back to their roots, and that's exactly what he did. This new wave of talent was hungry to make good cartoons, to shake up the formula with ideas that were outside of the box. Plus,
that was
all
the
of
run
these
of
shows
cartoons
had a
that
brand new
was,
home on
definitely like the thing whenever I finally started watching Cartoon Network.
Yeah, there's also the What a Cartoon thing that basically like showed you pilots for cartoons, and you could actually call in and let them know which one you liked the most.
Cartoon Network, and they were very popular. There was Dexter's Lab in 1995,
Love Dexter's
Johnny
Lab.
Bravo,
Love Johnny
I Am
Bravo.
Weasel, and Cow and Chicken in 1997.
Those two were alright.
Yeah. Oh, of course, Powerpuff Girls
was amazing.
Still feel the impact of this today, man.
Then there was Powerpuff
So I like the
Girls.
Powerpuff Girls, and I remember I went to tennis lessons around that time, and there was one of the kids there that was like, "You watch the Powerpuff Girls?" And there was one of the older guys who was like, "Hey, there's nothing wrong with the Powerpuff Girls."
Exactly.
I was just like, "Yeah."
Exactly.
In 1998, the majority of them performed extremely well and were the crown jewels of Cartoon Network. They were even given a special name, Cartoon Cartoons.
Cartoon, I think you'll see, is the most unequivocally doubly named thing on TV. Don't you agree? Don't you agree? Like wearing a muumuu. Yes.
With a tutu!
Yes. That's a no-no.
Or a lulu!
Baboon, baboon.
Hey, cartoon!
Ted Turner pushed Hanna-Barbera
Oh, SWAT
to
Cats.
produce content
Yes.
exclusively for Cartoon Network.
God.
Such as SWAT Cats and Two Stupid Dogs.
We're too stupid dogs.
Oh, ain't that cute? But it's wrong!
By proxy, this meant the end of airing on broadcast
Dude,
television.
both the SWAT
Funny
Cats
enough,
openings are so fucking metal.
They are,
Like, way
dude.
more metal than they have any right to be.
God.
The last cartoon from Hanna-Barbera to air on Broadcast Network was the Dumb and Dumber Show.
Yeah.
'Cause that was
Never
a thing.
saw that.
I remember seeing this, and I remember watching one episode of it and being like, this is nowhere near as funny as the movie.
But now we approach the end of our story. Hanna-Barbera might have been able to find a home on Cartoon Network and find success with their new programming, but it ultimately wouldn't be enough. In 1998, Hanna-Barbera was absorbed into Warner Brothers Animation and was relocated to their studio in Sherman Oaks, California.
So by 2001, it was basically all gone.
I'm thinking that I saw Tom and Jerry with Warner Brothers logos at some point. Maybe that's
Yes.
why.
Yeah, well, yeah, because Time Warner bought out all their stuff.
According to the old HP building, wasn't completely demolished. The main building remains intact, and the powers that said they
Honor its history.
The buildings, though, have been renovated for retail and residential development.
Fair enough. There it is.
Because of
That's
this
cool.
change, Hanna-Barbera
Super dope
had to
how they had the big posters on the side of it, though, with like SWAT Cats and all those things.
Yeah, dude.
What was it? was it like Turner Street or something? Like there was a street that like the Adult Swim studio was.
Yeah.
And they had something similar apparently. I saw a picture of it once, and you had like Aqua Teen, Hunger Force, and like stuff like that up on that street, and I thought that was dope.
Yeah.
It's like one of my friends got to go there and took pictures of it, and I was like, oh, that's awesome.
To relinquish all of the shows it was producing over to Cartoon Network Studios. After decades of massive success, Hanna-Barbera had finally run out of steam and was a shadow of their former self. Hanna-Barbera is a studio unlike any other. They saw an opportunity with televised animation, and they were able to rule that market with an iron fist. They created iconic cartoon characters that are known throughout the world and set many records along the way. But despite their best efforts to change with the times, it ultimately was not enough. From animated licensed properties to the rise of weekday syndicated cartoons, the landscape of television changed rapidly during the 80s and 90s.
We just got served,
and loosened the grip that Hanna-Barbera had on animated television. Yes, it was able to find a home on Cartoon Network and was able to pump out a handful of incredible shows during that time. But it was too little, too late. Warner Brothers was their final destination, and that is where they remain to this day. To their credit, Warner still produces content that focuses on the old Hanna-Barbera properties. There's the occasional reboot with Scooby-Doo and Tom and Jerry, but they never last for too long. There's also this bizarre trend of combining Hanna-Barbera characters alongside WWE wrestlers.
I will say this, there's actually one they did recently. It was Courage the Cowardly Dog and Scooby-Doo. And apparently it is like a conclusion to the Courage the Cowardly Dog storyline. And I think that's actually pretty cool.
Now, there's the rumor of a Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe in the works over at Warner.
Oh, God.
But this remains to be seen. I'm not sure how well that would be received.
I'm hearing it's more of a Warner verse because that includes like everything from like the Looney Tunes to Tom and Jerry to Yogi, Scooby-Doo. Basically,
Animaniacs?
Huh?
Animaniacs?
Yes. I hear that it's basically trying to encapsulate all of them. And I don't know how I feel about that.
Could be,
but it's supposed to happen by 2020.
Probably won't do it right.
Yeah, probably not.
20 with a new Scooby-Doo film. But for William Hanna and Joseph Barbera, they both kept working for their studio all the way up to their deaths. Bill Hanna died of throat cancer in 2001, and Joe Barbera died a few years later in 2006. The last thing he worked on was a Tom and Jerry short called The Karate Guard in 2005.
Man, look at that animation though.
Yeah.
Came a long way.
Even though their content was low budget and low quality, one cannot deny the impact Hanna-Barbera has left on the animation industry. 100%. Their cartoons and characters are loved by millions across the globe and are still praised to this very day. They inspired artists to pursue their own ideas and even hired some of them to work at their studio. And some of those people have gone on to create great things and continue to inspire future generations. Hanna-Barbera was truly the father of televised animation. And even though they are essentially gone, we owe them our gratitude for paving the way for animation history.
Yeah, I agree.
Now that I'm older, I see why that girl bear that was macking on Yogi was strange to me.
Yeah.
She doesn't have a shirt.
No, she doesn't.
But she has a skirt.
Yes.
That doesn't work right.
No, it doesn't.
She seems lewd as a result.
Well, there you go. All right. Well, there you go, everybody. That's effectively what ruined Hanna-Barbera. And damn, that's sad, man. That is sad because I have so many fond memories watching those shows. And now the fact that it's all trapped under the cap that is, Time Warner, and, we're never going to probably see the likes of that ever again it's kind of heartbreaking to me.
To be honest, it's a lot of time we wasted watching silly cartoons as kids, though. So.
But they still like entertained us. They still
good memories and stuff. But like as we've gotten older, we've gotten to where like our tastes in media have kind of matured. So
yeah, to an extent, yeah.
It's more interesting to us to watch things with like more concurrent. Is concurrent the right word? Like more continuity to like their stories and stuff like that. You know?
Yeah.
Get like a more complete experience out of our media that we're consuming.
I agree, and fully syndicated media like that, like that have a continuing overarching storyline. I'm all about, man. I like that, but also I think there's room for both. I think there's room for that, and there's also room for this. Maybe not to the degree that it held back in the day, but it definitely has its place, I feel. Just one-off stories that people can tell and then just like invent something crazy and zany, and they don't have to dedicate like a 3-episode arc to it or anything like that. It's just a quick one and done and just to have fun.
I think the closest thing that's come out similar to that recently is probably like the Smiling Friends.
Yeah, sort of like that. Although there is like little bits of continuity with each episode.
They're like
passes.
recurring characters and stuff, but they're not really trying to tell like an overarching like grand plot or anything.
No. They're just like they go with an idea, and then they try to squeeze as much comedy as they can out of it. And 99 times out of 100, it's hilarious. But honestly, I love this, man. I'm glad that we were able to watch this, and I'm glad that Saber Spark covered this. Let us know what y'all thought, and I guess until next time, if y'all want to see more from Saber Spark, feel free to share the requests either in the comment section or over on our Discord. And till then, I'm Nate.
I'm Nick. Pour one out for Hanna-Barbera.
Yep. And we'll see you in the next one, everybody. Peace.